You're holding up my bank over $5? Pathetic broke bastard.
A black single father walked into First Heritage Bank on a Tuesday morning. Just one question: why was his account charged a $5 fee he never agreed to?
Sir, please, just one quick look at my account.
Your account?
The manager laughed.
A man who fights a bank over $5? How much could he possibly have?
He snatched the paper and slammed it on the counter. Ray dragged this trash out before he steals something. The guard grabbed his arm and shoved him out the door. A woman in line shook her head. An older man looked away. He straightened his shirt and walked out quietly. But that manager had no idea who he'd just put his hands on. And when he found out, it was already too late. The lobby of First Heritage Bank smelled like carpet cleaner and old money. 2 tellers behind the counter. A security guard by the door scrolling through his phone. Tuesday morning, 9:47 a.m., and the place was nearly empty. Blake Dawson walked in alone. He wore a black crew neck tee under a faded blue and black flannel sleeves rolled to the elbows, khaki cargo pants, beat-up Asics with one sole worn thinner than the other, a $15 Casio on his left wrist, a canvas backpack with a broken zipper slung over one shoulder. Back home, his daughter Lily was eating cereal in front of the TV. 5 years old, 2 hair puffs, a stuffed bear she never let go of.
I'll be back in 20 minutes. Just a quick stop at the bank.
He walked up to the counter. The teller, Heather Collins, mid-20s, brown hair pinned back, smiled.
How can I help you today?
There's a $5 maintenance fee on my checking account. I don't think it should be there.
I set up direct deposit to waive it. Heather typed in his account number. Her eyes moved across the screen, balanced.
Let me look into that for you. It might take just a minute.
Take your time.
That's when Gerald Whitmore appeared. He came from the glass office at the back of the lobby, the one with the brass nameplate that read, Branch Manager. He walked the way men walk when they believe the floor belongs to them. Blazer buttoned, Gucci loafers clicking against the tile, gold-rimmed glasses catching the fluorescent light. Gerald glanced at Blake. His eyes traveled flannel shirt, cargo pants, old sneakers, canvas backpack. The scan took less than 3 seconds. Gerald had already decided everything he needed to know. He stepped behind the counter, leaned over Heather's shoulder, and looked at the screen. $312.44. His lips pressed into a thin line. That thin, bloodless line he made when someone wasn't worth his time. What seems to be the problem here? Gerald asked. Not to Blake, to Heather. Mr. Dawson has a question about a maintenance fee. The fee is standard. Gerald straightened up and looked at Blake for the first time. Accounts below the minimum balance threshold are subject to a monthly maintenance charge. It's in the terms you signed. Blake kept his voice even. I set up direct deposit specifically to waive that fee. If you check the deposit history. Sir. Gerald raised one hand, palm flat, like stopping traffic. I don't need to check anything. The system applied the fee. The system is correct. He tilted his head. If $5 is enough to bring you in here and waste my staff's time, I think we both know what kind of account this is. The words settled over the lobby like smoke. Heather's fingers froze on the keyboard. The security guard looked up from his phone. Gerald leaned forward, lowered his voice just enough to sound reasonable. I think it's best if you leave. We have real customers to serve. There were no other customers. The lobby was empty. Blake didn't move. I'm asking you to check the direct deposit. That's all. Gerald's jaw tightened. He turned to the security guard and snapped his fingers. Actually snapped them the way you call a dog. Ray, could you escort this gentleman out? We're done here. Ray hesitated, looked at Blake, looked at the empty lobby, then walked over slow heavy with apology. Sir, I'm sorry, but... He put a hand on Blake's arm. Blake looked down at the hand, then up at Ray, then past him at Gerald, who had already turned his back and was walking toward his glass office adjusting his cufflinks. Blake didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene. He let Ray guide him toward the door. But at the threshold he stopped, just for 1 second, and he looked back at Gerald Whitmore. One look, quiet, steady, the kind of look that doesn't blink. Gerald didn't see it, He was already behind his glass door, straightening the brass nameplate with his thumb. It didn't matter. He'd learn soon enough. Because the man he just threw out of his bank, the man in the flannel shirt and the $15 watch, had $95 million sitting in that building, and he was coming back. Blake drove home in a 2011 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and a car seat in the back. The engine rattled at every red light. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands and said nothing the entire ride. The light on Maple and 3rd stayed red for 40 seconds. He counted. His jaw was tight. His knuckles were pale against the black steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, a woman in a Mercedes SUV checked her lipstick. She didn't know. Nobody knew. Nobody ever knew. He parked in front of a 3-bedroom house on a quiet street in the suburbs. Small yard, chain-link fence. A pink tricycle tipped over on the porch. The mailbox had a sticker on it, a cartoon sun that Lily had put there 6 months ago. Half of it had peeled off in the rain. Inside, Lily was sitting on the kitchen floor drawing circles on construction paper with a broken crayon. She looked up. "Daddy, you're back early." "Yeah, baby. Bank was quick today." He made her a peanut butter sandwich, cut the crusts off the way she liked, and set it on her plastic plate, the one with the elephants. She ate. He sat across from her and didn't eat anything. He watched her chew with her mouth open, grape juice running down her chin, and he thought about Gerald Whitmore's face when he snapped his fingers. The casual cruelty of it. The ease. After lunch, Lily fell asleep on the couch with her bear. Blake covered her with a blanket, stood there for a moment watching her breathe, then walked into the kitchen. On the refrigerator, held up by a magnet shaped like a sunflower, was a photograph. A woman in a nurse's uniform, smiling, holding a baby. The edges were worn soft from years of being touched. The color had faded to a warm yellow, but her smile was still sharp, still certain, still the strongest thing in any room she walked into. That was Gloria Dawson, Blake's mother. She worked 2 jobs for 17 years. Days at the county hospital, changing bedpans, emptying catheters, lifting patients twice her size. Nights at a commercial cleaning company office buildings, banks, parking garages. She came home at midnight smelling like bleach and floor wax, and she still packed Blake's lunch for school before she slept. She wrote notes on the napkins, little things in her cramped handwriting. "You're smart, don't forget." Or, "Bad days end, you don't." She never complained. Not once. Not about the double shifts. Not about the landlord who raised rent every year. Not about Blake's father who left before Blake learned to walk. She never said his name. Blake learned early not to ask. Gloria died when Blake was 19. Ovarian cancer. She'd been ignoring the pain for months because she couldn't afford to miss a shift. By the time she went to the hospital, the same hospital where she worked, it had spread to her liver. The nurses on her floor cried when they saw her name on the intake chart. They all knew her. She had mopped their break room for years. She left behind a $43,000 medical debt and a son who had nothing except a library card and a second-hand laptop with a missing E-key. Blake typed his first line of code on that laptop. He was 20 years old, sitting on the floor of a studio apartment the size of a parking space, teaching himself Python from free tutorials at 3 in the morning. The radiator didn't work. He coded in a winter coat. When the screen froze, he'd close the lid blow on his fingers and start again. By 22, he'd built a personal finance app, simple, clean, designed for people like his mother. People who got crushed by hidden fees, overdraft charges, minimum balance penalties. The kind of fees that banks buried in page 47 of a terms agreement nobody read. He pitched it to 14 investors. 13 said no. Some didn't even let him finish. One told him the market was already saturated. Another said he didn't have the pedigree. Blake knew what that meant. He kept going. The 14th, a woman named Ruth Avery at a small venture fund in Oakland, gave him $200,000 in seed money. Not because the product was perfect, because she watched Blake explain with zero self-pity how his mother died with a debt she earned by saving other people's lives. Ruth wrote the check before he left the room. By 25, the app had 400,000 users. By 27, 2 million. By 28, Blake's company, Equinox Financial, was valued at $2.1 billion. It served 12 million people across 38 states. No hidden fees, no minimum balance, no penalties for being poor. Forbes put him on the cover. He wore a plain gray t-shirt for the photo. The interviewer asked him what luxury he'd bought himself. Blake said, "A dishwasher. The old one leaked." Blake's personal net worth sat at $95 million spread across several banks. One of those banks was First Heritage, the same branch where Gerald Whitmore had just snapped his fingers at a security guard and had him dragged out like a stray. Blake could have walked in wearing a custom suit, could have driven a car that cost more than Gerald's house, could have dropped his name and watched the whole lobby bow. But that wasn't how Gloria raised him. She taught him one thing, and he never forgot it. Money is not for showing. Money is for protecting the people you love. So he drove a Civic, wore a flannel, strapped a $15 watch to his wrist. And when a man in Gucci loafers called him trash, he picked up his daughter's lunchbox, walked to his car, and sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before he did anything at all. Not because he was weak, because he was deciding exactly how strong to be. 10 minutes. Blake sat in the driveway for 10 minutes with the engine off and the windows down. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked back and forth across the street. A dog barked somewhere. Inside the house, Lily was still asleep on the couch. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that used to grip a mop handle at 3 in the morning, cleaning the same kind of bank lobby he'd just been thrown out of. The calluses had softened over the years, but they hadn't disappeared. Some things stay with you whether you want them to or not. He pulled out his phone. The first call went to Vanessa Price. Vanessa had been Blake's CFO since the company had 6 employees and a shared desk at a co-working space in Oakland. She was the one who told him to stop apologizing during investor meetings, the one who rewrote his pitch deck at 2 in the morning and handed it back with a post-it that said, "Stop being humble, it's annoying." She picked up on the second ring. "V, it's me." "What's wrong? You sound off," Blake told her. All of it. The $5 fee, the branch manager, the snapping fingers, the security guard's hand on his arm. He told it flat, no emotion, the way he gave quarterly reports. Just facts. Vanessa was quiet for 5 seconds. That was a long time for Vanessa. In 5 seconds, Vanessa could fire a vendor, approve a budget, and send 3 emails. 5 seconds of silence from her meant something had broken through. "How much do we have in that branch?" "95 million. Million." Another pause. Then, "What do you want to do?" "Pull it. All of it. Tomorrow morning. I'll have the paperwork ready by tonight." She paused again. "Blake, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine, but we'll deal with that later. I'll call you at 8. She hung up. Blake stared at the sprinkler for another 30 seconds. Then he made the second call. Thomas Grant picked up on the first ring. He always did. Thomas was Blake's personal attorney, not the corporate team, not the firm of 40 lawyers that handled Equinox's regulatory filings. Thomas was the one Blake called when things got personal. They'd met at a legal aid clinic 8 years ago, back when Blake was still sleeping on an air mattress and Thomas was doing pro bono work on weekends. They'd trusted each other ever since. "Thomas, I need to ask you something." "Go." "First Heritage Bank, the branch on Whitfield Avenue. Do they have security cameras in the lobby?" "Every branch does. Federal requirement." "Why?" Blake told him. Thomas didn't go quiet the way Vanessa did. Thomas got sharp. His voice dropped half an octave, and every word came out like it had been filed to a point. "What's the manager's name?" "Gerald Whitmore." "Did he touch you?" "No. He had the guard do it." "Did the guard use force?" "He grabbed my arm and walked me to the door. In front of other customers, there was nobody else. The lobby was empty. That's worse. No witnesses for his defense." Thomas exhaled slowly. "Here's what we do. I'll file a formal complaint with the FDIC and the OCC before noon. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau by end of day. I'll also draft a demand letter to the bank's legal department, not for money, for the footage." "I don't want to sue them, Thomas." "You won't have to. Once they see who you are and what's on that tape, they'll come to you on their knees. But I need the footage before they delete it." "How fast can you get it?" "If I send the preservation letter tonight, they can't touch it. Legally, it's frozen." "Do it." The third call was to Diane Shelton. Diane ran communications for Equinox Financial. She had spent 15 years at 2 of the biggest PR firms in New York, before Blake hired her away with a simple pitch: "I don't want spin. I want the truth told well." Diane had laughed and said, "That's the hardest kind of spin there is." She took the job the next day and never looked back. She answered with a mouthful of salad. "Blake, what's up?" "Something happened today, at the bank." "Which bank?" "First Heritage, Whitfield Avenue branch." "Okay, how bad?" "Bad enough that I'm calling you." Diane put her fork down. Blake could hear it clink against the plate. "Tell me everything." He told her, shorter this time. He was getting tired of the story, tired of hearing himself say the words, tired of the way they tasted like something bitter he couldn't spit out. "Jesus." A pause. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet." "Yet. When it's time, you'll know." "Blake, if this gets out before we control it?" "It won't. Not yet. I want the footage first. Thomas is handling that." "Okay, but when you give me the green light, I'm not going to be gentle." "I'm counting on it." He hung up. 3 calls, 12 minutes total. No shouting, no threats, no tears. He walked back inside. Lily was still asleep, one arm hanging off the couch, her bear on the floor. He picked up the bear and tucked it back under her arm. She mumbled something and curled up tighter. Blake stood in the kitchen looking at the photograph on the refrigerator, Gloria in her nurse's uniform, smiling, holding him as a baby. He wondered what she would say. Probably something simple. Probably, "Don't be mean about it. Just be right." He opened the fridge, took out a juice box, poked the straw in, and set it on the coffee table for when Lily woke up. Then he sat down and waited. 7 miles away, Gerald Whitmore pulled into his driveway in a leased Lexus IS. He walked inside, loosened his tie, and told his wife about his day. The funny part, he said, was the look on the guy's face when Ray grabbed his arm. "Like a lost dog," he said. His wife laughed. Gerald poured himself a glass of wine, sat in his recliner, and smiled. It was the last good evening he would ever have. Wednesday morning, 9:05 a.m. The front doors of First Heritage Bank swung open and 4 people walked in. Blake Dawson was in front. Same black crew neck tee, same faded flannel, same beat-up Asics. Same canvas backpack, same $15 Casio. He looked exactly the way he looked yesterday, like a man who didn't own anything worth mentioning. Behind him, Vanessa Price in a white blazer and black trousers, carrying an iPad in one hand and a leather portfolio in the other. Her heels clicked with the kind of rhythm that makes people in lobbies look up. Next to her, Thomas Grant in an anthracite suit that cost more than Gerald's monthly salary. He carried a single black briefcase, slim Italian, the kind that only holds documents that end careers. And behind them, a notary public quiet clipboard in hand, already filling in the date. Heather Collins saw them first. She was at her station sorting deposit slips. She looked up, saw Blake, and her hands went still. Her eyes moved to the 3 people behind him, the blazer, the suit, the briefcase, and something shifted in her face. Not fear, recognition. The kind that comes when you realize you were right about something everyone else missed. Gerald Whitmore was in his glass office, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone. He glanced through the glass, saw the group, and frowned. Then he saw Blake. His chair snapped upright. Gerald stood, buttoned his blazer, one button the way he always did when he wanted to look in charge, and walked out of his office. His Gucci loafers hit the tile in quick, hard steps. His gold-rimmed glasses caught the overhead light. He stopped 6 feet from Blake. His chin lifted. His lips formed that thin, bloodless line. "You again." Gerald's voice was loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "I thought I made myself very clear yesterday. You are not welcome in this branch. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." Blake said nothing. Thomas stepped forward. He didn't rush. He moved the way a man moves when he knows the next 60 seconds belong to him. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and held it between 2 fingers. "Thomas Grant, attorney at law. I represent Mr. Dawson." His voice was calm, measured, and absolutely flat. "We're here to process a withdrawal." Gerald looked at the card, didn't take it. He let out a small laugh. The kind that's meant to show everyone in the room that you're not impressed. A withdrawal from what? He glanced at Blake. His $300. Thomas didn't answer. He looked at Vanessa. Vanessa stepped forward, opened her iPad and placed it flat on the counter. The screen was already lit. It showed a consolidated portfolio, multiple accounts, multiple holdings, all under one name, Blake Dawson. Total balance $95,247,000. Heather saw it first. Her hand came up to her mouth. Not dramatic, involuntary. The way your body reacts before your brain catches up. Gerald leaned in. Read the number, blinked, read it again. His smirk didn't fall all at once. It melted slowly like wax near a flame. First the corners of his mouth loosened. Then his jaw went slack. Then his eyes went wide and stayed there. This is... He swallowed. This is a joke. This has to be some kind of joke. Vanessa didn't blink. She picked up her phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. 2 rings. A voice answered, male mid-50s, the kind of voice that sounds like it's never been interrupted. This is David Caldwell, Regional Director, First Heritage Bancorp. Who am I speaking with? Vanessa Price, CFO of Equinox Financial. I'm standing in your Whitfield Avenue branch with our founder, Mr. Blake Dawson. I'm calling to confirm his account portfolio. A brief pause. Mr. Dawson is one of our highest value private clients. His combined holdings at that branch are $95,247,000. Is there a problem? Gerald's face went gray. Not pale gray. The color of a man watching his life rearrange itself in real time. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. There is a problem and we'll be addressing it today. Mr. Dawson will be closing all accounts at this branch, effective immediately. Silence on the line. Then Caldwell's voice, lower, now stripped of all formality. What happened? Your branch manager will be able to explain. We'll forward the details. Vanessa hung up. The lobby was silent, completely silent. Not the comfortable silence of an empty room, the suffocating silence of a room full of people watching a man drown. 2 customers stood near the door, frozen mid-step. A third sat in the waiting area, a deposit form crumpled in her lap, staring. The security guard, Ray, stood against the wall with his arms at his sides looking at the floor. Thomas placed a folder on the counter. Inside, a formal withdrawal request, notarized, time-stamped, legally binding. Full liquidation of all accounts. Wire transfer to a competitor institution. Effective within 24 hours. He slid it across the counter toward Gerald. This requires the branch manager's acknowledgement and signature. Gerald stared at the folder. His hands were shaking. Not a lot, just enough to notice. Just enough for everyone in that lobby to see. He reached for his pen, the Mont Blanc he kept clipped to his blazer pocket, the one he liked to twirl during meetings. His fingers fumbled. The pen slipped. It hit the counter and rolled to the edge. Heather caught it before it fell. She picked it up and set it back down without looking at him. Gerald signed. Blake hadn't spoken a single word since he walked through the door. Not one. He stood in the same spot, hands at his sides, wearing the same flannel, the same sneakers, the same watch. He didn't need to speak. The number on that iPad said everything, and the silence in that lobby said the rest. Vanessa closed her iPad. Thomas closed his briefcase. The notary stamped the last page. Blake turned toward the door, and for the second time in 2 days, he walked out of First Heritage Bank. But this time, nobody escorted him. This time, everyone watched him leave the way you watch something you know you'll never get back. Gerald stood behind the counter, holding the pen he'd just signed with. His hand was still shaking. The folder sat in front of him, signed, stamped final. $95 million walking out the door in the body of a man wearing a flannel shirt. He needed to fix this. He needed to call someone. He needed to make this stop. He reached for the desk phone and dialed the regional office. His fingers missed the buttons twice. On the third try, the line connected. David Caldwell's office. This is Gerald Whitmore, branch manager at Whitfield Avenue. I need to speak with Mr. Caldwell now. A pause. Then Caldwell's voice came through, and it was not the measured professional tone from earlier. It was ice. Gerald, I just got off the phone with the CFO of Equinox Financial. Do you want to explain to me how you managed to lose a $95 million client in under 24 hours? Gerald's throat went dry. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. The gentleman came in yesterday without any identification of his holdings. He looked like, his appearance didn't suggest his appearance. Caldwell repeated the words like he was reading an autopsy report. You ejected a private wealth client, our second largest depositor in the tri-state region, because of his appearance. I didn't know who he was. That's the point, Gerald. That's exactly the point. You didn't know. And instead of finding out, you had a security guard put his hands on the man and walk him out of our building. Gerald pressed the phone against his ear so hard the plastic creaked. The lobby was still full. Heather was still at her station. The customers were still watching. Everyone could hear Caldwell's voice bleeding through the receiver, not the words, but the tone. The tone was enough. Sir, if I could just have a conversation with Mr. Dawson, I'm sure we can put him on the phone. Gerald looked across the lobby. Blake was standing near the door with Vanessa and Thomas. He hadn't left yet. He was reading something on his phone, calm as a man waiting for a bus. Mr. Dawson, Gerald's voice cracked on the second syllable. He held out the receiver. The regional director would like to speak with you. Blake looked at the phone, then at Gerald. He walked over slow, unhurried, and took the receiver. This is Blake Dawson. Mr. Dawson, this is David Caldwell. I want to personally apologize for what happened to you at our branch. This is completely unacceptable, and I take full responsibility on behalf of First Heritage. Blake's voice was low and even. The same tone he used in board meetings. The same tone he used when Lily asked why her mother didn't live with them anymore. Controlled. Careful. Every word chosen. Mr. Caldwell, I came into this branch yesterday to ask about a $5 fee on my checking account. Your branch manager called me trash. He had your security guard grab my arm and drag me to the door. The lobby was empty, but it wouldn't have mattered if it was full. He'd already decided what I was the moment I walked in. Silence on the line. The kind of silence that has weight. I'm coming to the branch personally. I'll be there within the hour. Please don't leave. Blake handed the phone back to Gerald without looking at him. Gerald took it with both hands the way you catch something falling. 42 minutes later, a black Lincoln Town car pulled into the parking lot. Sandra Wells stepped out, Regional Director of Client Relations sent by Caldwell, when he realized this required a face, not a phone call. She was tall, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit that fit like it had been born on her. She carried nothing. No folder, no briefcase, just herself and the authority that came with 31 years at the company. She walked into the lobby, scanned the room, and went directly to Blake. She extended her hand. Mr. Dawson, I'm Sandra Wells, Regional Director. I'm here on behalf of David Caldwell and the entire First Heritage organization. What happened to you yesterday was inexcusable. I am deeply sorry. Blake shook her hand. One firm grip. He nodded. That was all. Sandra turned to Gerald. The look she gave him was worse than any words. It was the look of someone who has already written your termination letter in their head and is just waiting for the ink. Mr. Whitmore, my office at Regional, 4 o'clock today. Do not be late. Gerald opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it again. Sandra turned back to Blake. Is there anything we can do to retain your business? Blake looked at her. For the first time all morning, he spoke more than a sentence. Yesterday, I walked into this branch and asked a simple question. I was polite. I was patient. And your manager looked at my clothes, looked at my skin, and decided I was nothing. He didn't check my account. He didn't ask my name. He didn't even let your teller finish her job. Blake paused. There's nothing you can do. The money is already gone. Sandra nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't try to negotiate. She knew. Blake turned to Heather. She was standing behind her counter, eyes red, hands clasped together in front of her like she was holding herself in place. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice was small. I should have done something. I should have said something. He's my boss and you were the only person in this building who treated me like a human being. Blake's voice softened for the first time all day. Don't apologize for that. Heather bit her lip and nodded. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it fast like she was embarrassed. Blake turned, walked past Sandra, past Gerald, past Ray, the security guard who couldn't lift his eyes off the floor. Vanessa and Thomas fell in behind him. The notary followed, clipboard tucked under his arm. The glass doors swung shut. Gerald stood alone behind the counter. The folder was still there. The pen was still there. The brass nameplate on his office door still read branch manager, but everything it meant had already left the building. Gerald Whitmore drove to the regional office at 4 o'clock that afternoon. He wore the same blazer, the same loafers, the same gold-rimmed glasses. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror twice before getting out of the car. He adjusted his tie, straightened his collar, told himself this was just a conversation. He told himself it would be a warning maybe, a note in his file. He'd been with the bank for 14 years. That had to count for something. He'd hit his targets every quarter. He'd never missed a compliance review. 14 years of showing up, staying late, shaking the right hands. That had to mean something. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. Sandra Wells sat behind her desk. She didn't offer him a chair. She didn't offer him water. She didn't ask how the drive was. She placed a single sheet of paper in front of him and said, "This is your termination effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal items from the branch. Security will escort you." Gerald stared at the paper. His mouth opened and closed twice before words came out. "Sandra, 14 years. I've given this company 14 years. And in 14 seconds, you cost us $95 million and a lawsuit we haven't even calculated yet." She folded her hands. "You also cost us something we can't get back, our reputation, with every client who walks through that door wondering if they'll be treated the same way." It was a judgment call. The man looked like he didn't belong. "That is exactly the problem, Gerald." Sandra's voice didn't rise. It dropped. "You made a judgment based on what a man looked like in a federally regulated institution, on camera." Gerald went pale. The camera. Every second, audio included. Our legal team has already reviewed it. They've heard every word you said, including "drag this trash out." Gerald left the building carrying a cardboard box with a desk lamp, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Boss," and a framed photo of himself shaking hands with the previous regional director. The security guard who walked him to his car was younger than his son. The guard held the door open for him and said nothing. There was nothing to say. He sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. The engine was running, but he didn't move. He watched two employees walk past his car, glance at the cardboard box in the passenger seat, and look away. They already knew. He drove home. He didn't tell his wife that night. He told her he'd been restructured. She poured him wine and said it would work out. He drank 3 glasses and went to bed at 8. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling and listening to his wife's breathing. Sleep didn't come. But by Thursday morning, it didn't matter what he told her, because by Thursday morning, the whole country knew. Someone inside the bank, Gerald never found out who, leaked the lobby footage to a local news station. The clip was 47 seconds long. It showed Gerald snapping his fingers. It showed the security guard grabbing Blake's arm. It showed Blake walking out the door, silent, dignified, alone. The station ran it at 6 o'clock. By 9, it was on 3 national networks. By noon, it was everywhere. The headline wrote itself, "Bank manager humiliates black father, over $5 fee, loses $95 million client." Twitter picked it up first. Then Instagram. Then TikTok, where a 17-year-old in Atlanta set the clip to music and got 4 million views in 6 hours. The hashtag Justice for Blake started trending at 2 in the afternoon and didn't stop for 3 days. People dug up Gerald's LinkedIn profile. His photo, that slick, gel-haired headshot with the confident smile, became a meme. Someone photoshopped his face onto a clown. Someone else turned his quote into a t-shirt. How much could he possibly have? A street vendor in Brooklyn was selling them by Friday afternoon. Gerald made the mistake of fighting back. He posted a statement on Facebook, 3 paragraphs explaining that the situation had been taken out of context and that he had always treated every client with professionalism and respect. The comments section caught fire in minutes, hundreds of replies, then thousands. People shared their own stories of being followed in stores, of being asked for extra ID at checkout, of being told they were in the wrong line, the wrong neighborhood, the wrong bank. Gerald's post became a confessional wall for every person who had ever been looked at the way he looked at Blake. A woman in Philadelphia wrote 4 paragraphs about being denied a mortgage in 2019 because the loan officer didn't think she could afford it. She could. She'd had the down payment in cash. He deleted the post after 4 hours, then deleted his account, then deleted his LinkedIn. It didn't help. The screenshots were already saved, already shared, already permanent. First Heritage Bank issued a formal press release on Friday morning. They apologized publicly. They announced a company-wide mandatory training program on implicit bias and racial profiling. They pledged $500,000 to community banking initiatives in underserved neighborhoods. They did not mention Gerald by name, but they didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Gerald applied to 3 banks over the next 2 weeks. The first, a regional chain in Connecticut, declined after a background check. The second, a mid-sized commercial bank in New Jersey, got to the second interview before someone on the hiring committee Googled his name. The interviewer's face changed mid-sentence. The handshake at the end was limp. Gerald knew before he reached the parking lot. The third didn't even respond to his application. 6 weeks later, Gerald Whitmore accepted a position as a junior credit analyst at a small credit union in a strip mall outside Trenton. No private office, no brass nameplate, no glass door. He sat at a shared desk in an open-plan room next to a 24-year-old who had graduated college 5 months ago. The kid called him Sir on the first day. By the second week, he just called him Gerald. He wore khaki pants and a button-down shirt from Kohl's, rubber-soled shoes from a clearance rack, no Gucci, no cufflinks. No gold-rimmed glasses. He'd switched to plain black frames because a woman at a gas station had recognized him from the video. She hadn't said anything. She'd just stared. That was worse. The branch manager pin was in a drawer at home. His wife had suggested throwing it away. He couldn't bring himself to do it. He opened the drawer sometimes late at night and looked at it. It was the size of a quarter. It weighed almost nothing. But it was the heaviest thing he owned. Some men lose their jobs. Gerald lost the only version of himself he knew how to be. 3 months after he walked out of First Heritage Bank, Blake Dawson held a press conference in a community center on the south side of Chicago, the same neighborhood where he grew up. The same block where his mother used to catch the bus to her night shift. The building used to be a laundromat. Now it was a community center with donated folding chairs and a mural of Frederick Douglass on the side wall that a local teenager had painted the summer before. He stood at a folding table with a single microphone. No stage, no podium, no teleprompter. Behind him, a hand-painted banner read, "Open Door Initiative." 40 people sat in metal chairs, local reporters, community organizers, a few single parents who had driven an hour to be there. A woman in the second row held a baby on her lap and a checkbook in her hand. She thought it was a fundraiser. It wasn't. Blake spoke for 7 minutes. He didn't mention Gerald. He didn't mention the video. He didn't mention $95 million. He talked about his mother. "My mom worked 2 jobs for 17 years. She never had a bank account that didn't charge her for being poor. Every month, something, an overdraft fee, a maintenance charge, a minimum balance penalty. She used to say, 'They take a little piece every time, and after a while there's nothing left.'" She died, owing $43,000 to a hospital where she changed bedpans for 9 years. He paused. The room was silent. The woman in the second row pressed her baby closer to her chest. The Open Door Initiative is not a charity. It's a correction. Starting today, Equinox Financial is committing $2 million a year to partner with community banks across the country. Banks that don't charge hidden fees. Banks that don't set minimum balances. Banks that don't look at a person's shoes before they decide whether to help them. He announced 4 partnerships, community banks in Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, and Houston. Each one would receive funding, technology, and training from Equinox. Each one had signed a pledge: no hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements, no discriminatory practices. Period. A reporter in the back raised her hand. "Mr. Dawson, is this a response to what happened at First Heritage?" Blake looked at her. "This is a response to what happens everywhere, every day, to people nobody writes articles about." That was it. 7 minutes. No questions after that. He stepped away from the microphone, shook hands with the 4 bank directors, and walked out the side door. The woman in the second row caught him in the hallway. She didn't say anything at first. She just held out her hand, and when Blake took it, she squeezed it hard and whispered, "My mama was the same. 2 jobs. Same thing." Blake nodded. He held her hand for a long time before he let go. The press conference made the news, but not the way the bank video had. It didn't trend. It didn't go viral. It was a 30-second segment between a weather report and a car commercial. And that was fine. Blake didn't build it for cameras. He built it for the woman in the second row with the baby and the checkbook and every person like her. 2 weeks later, Blake visited Lily's elementary school, not for a parent-teacher conference. The principal had asked if he'd speak to the kids. Nothing about business, nothing about money, just talk to them. He sat on a tiny plastic chair in a circle of 5-year-olds. Lily sat next to him, proud enough to vibrate. Blake told them a story about a boy who couldn't afford a computer, so he went to the library every day after school and used theirs until the librarian had to kick him out at closing time. The kids laughed. Lily whispered loudly to the girl next to her, "That's my daddy." He didn't tell them about First Heritage. He didn't tell them about $95 million. He told them that the boy from the library grew up and built something, and the only reason it worked was because he didn't stop going back. A boy in the front row with a gap in his teeth raised his hand and asked, "Did the librarian ever let him stay late?" Blake smiled. Once, on his birthday. That night, Blake made mac and cheese for dinner, the boxed kind. Lily sat at the kitchen table with her bear propped up on the chair next to her drawing circles on construction paper, the same thing she'd been doing the morning everything happened. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby?" "Why did that man yell at you?" Blake put down the wooden spoon. He turned off the stove. He walked over and knelt beside her chair so his eyes were level with hers. "Because he couldn't see who we are." Lily tilted her head. "Is he blind?" Blake almost smiled. "No, baby. Some people, they look at you and they only see what's on the outside. Your clothes, your shoes, the color of your skin, and they decide that's all you are. But that's not all we are. No, it's not. So it's his problem." Blake looked at his daughter. 5 years old, 2 hair puffs, grape juice stains from breakfast still on her shirt. Holding a broken crayon in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other, she had Gloria's eyes. That same certainty, that same quiet strength that didn't need anyone's permission to exist. "Yeah," he said. "It's his problem, baby, not ours." Lily went back to drawing. Blake went back to stirring the mac and cheese. The kitchen smelled like butter and processed cheddar, and the light above the stove flickered the way it always did. Nothing changed. That was the point. Blake still drove the Civic, still wore the flannel, still strapped the $15 Casio to his wrist every morning. He still packed Lily's lunchbox with a peanut butter sandwich crusts cut off before driving her to school. $95 million was a number, a big one. But it wasn't the thing that mattered. The thing that mattered was the man who carried it and what he chose to do with it when the world finally looked his way. Gerald Whitmore judged a man by his shoes. Blake Dawson judged a system by how it treated the people at the bottom. One of them lost everything. The other built something that will outlast them both. Sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest weight. Blake never raised his voice in that bank. Not the first day when a man in Gucci loafers called him trash. Not the second day when he came back with a lawyer, a CFO, and 95 million reasons to scream. He didn't need volume. He had something better. The patience to wait until his silence said more than Gerald's shouting ever could. A $5 fee. That's where this started. $5. The kind of amount most people wouldn't bother fighting over. But Blake didn't fight for the money. He fought because a man looked at the color of his skin and the state of his shoes and decided he was nothing. And Blake knew the way his mother had known, the way every person who has ever been dismissed on sight knows that if you let it go once, it never stops. Today, the Open Door Initiative operates in 12 cities. 47,000 families have accessed fee-free banking through its partnerships. Equinox Financial just crossed 20 million users, and Blake Dawson still drives a 2011 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and a car seat in the back. Some people change when the world sees them. Blake didn't. He was the same man before the cameras as he was after. The same man in the bank lobby as he was in his kitchen cutting the crusts off a peanut butter sandwich for a 5-year-old girl who thinks her daddy is the strongest person alive. She's right. Have you ever been judged before anyone knew your story? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already subscribed, stories like this don't tell themselves.